Hello everyone, welcome to.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast for everything disability. Today, I have with me Jonathan Shar and
Hello.
David Cunningham and myself, David D. Today, we'll be talking about computation, neuroscience, and people with disability. We'll be joined here with Sean Moriarty. Please like and share,
Hi.
and over to you, Cunningham.
Yeah, thanks there, David. And look, welcome everyone to the episode. And welcome, Sean. How are you,
Thank you.
mate?
I'm all right. What about you?
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah, pretty good. You've had a good day today, have you?
Yeah. Well, you?
Excellent. Right. Fantastic. Like, so we've got a number of questions for you, because about your the issue of computational neuroscience. So the first one I want you to ask about is to tell us a bit about yourself and why you got so passionate about science.
Yeah. Well, I was always
Away you
very
go.
interested in how. Yeah, thank you. I was always very interested in how things work. And yeah, when I was born, I was premature by a month, and I had cerebral palsy, and yeah, they sort of said I'd never walk, but yeah, I did a lot of physio, and yeah, they I had mild spastic diplegia in my legs, and after I think I was about 4, I could walk normally, well, yeah, mostly normally. I think a trained eye could pick it, but yeah, one of the things that I think wasn't diagnosed until much later was I believe I have actually been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, what probably would have been called autism. I'm sorry, Asperger's at the time. And I've always had this, intense fascination with how everything worked, whether it be clocks or, the sun or plants, anything really. And yeah, I've basically, it's been an obsession of mine for since I can remember.
So I guess then your schooling was all right, was all growing up.
Um, it was kind of mixed. I was basically most teachers thought I was gifted, but I'd often drift off in classes to the point where basically they had me assessed for epilepsy, because they thought I might be having absence seizures with epilepsy, and it turned out not to be the case. And
Wow.
they didn't actually get any firm diagnosis, but I now believe it to be autistic shutdown and sensory overload, and just sheer utter boredom, I think. Yeah. So
And terrific. And
yeah. I beg your pardon?
so like when it came to your passion for science, I mean, you did you think about going to university when you had your passion for
Um,
science? Like, did you pursue any like TAFE or like all university courses in science at all?
I did. Yeah, I did. I started doing. Uh, I was always quite good at science. That was probably my strongest subject in high school. And I started doing at University of Western Sydney Nepean. It was at that time. I think it's called Western Sydney University now. I enrolled in a Bachelor of Applied Science, Applied Chemistry, I believe it was. And I did that for about 18 months, but then I got horrendously physically ill with strep throat, which went undiagnosed for about 18 months. And yeah, I was just horrendously ill. And yeah, I basically had to withdraw because I was like missing laboratories all over the place. So I came back home to Bathurst, kicked around there for got a few jobs for a couple of years, and 2 years after, I was sick of doing jobs that weren't intellectually stimulating. So I enrolled in Bachelor of Information Technology at Charles Sturt University. One thing I used to do when I was doing the chemistry degree was I used to go and read the IEEE database, which back in the day was a large cathode ray tube paper white display, and they used to show the scientific papers on this thing, and it had a whole drawer full of CD-ROMs you can put in, and any electrical, computer, and electronic engineering, radar engineering, integrated circuits, that sort of stuff. And that's when I first was introduced to this idea of an artificial neural network and to computational neuroscience. Computational neuroscience being basically the simulation of nervous tissues in a computer. So, think small parts of the spinal cord or the brain or something like that, with eventually a view to when obviously computers weren't the best back then, and they're still not quite up to the task, obviously, of simulating a whole brain, but that's the eventual goal. Obviously, that has direct applications in creating an artificial intelligence, for instance. But the more exciting prospects, I think, are actually understanding ourselves and disabilities, and how nervous tissues, how the brain, how the spinal cord can go wrong, and what might be done to remedy a disability. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You can't hear? I can hear you.
How can computational neuroscience enhance the quality of life for people with disabilities?
Thank you. Yes, computational neuroscience can enhance the lives of people with disabilities in several ways. The first way is understanding brain scans and what might actually be a problem with the brain or the spinal cord. There are also model neural networks, which are simulated nerves hooked up to do computational tasks, like are quite regularly used in scans, for instance. They quite often outperform statistical methods in basically finding the underlying structure. But there's also the possibility, and I think we're starting to see actual clinical applications of actually directly interfacing with human neural tissue using electrical signals, and that comes from the understanding of human nervous system, which computational neuroscience provides. For instance, there's in Monash, I believe they're working on the first clinical trials of a commercial vision appliance that interfaces directly into the brain. That's just one example. Another good example would be a cochlear implant that was partially an outgrowth of computational neuroscience. I'm sorry, David, I can't hear you if you're talking.
I'm not talking. The other David's supposed to be talking.
Yeah, David Cunningham, I can't hear you.
Cunningham. I can't hear him either. Jonathan, can you ask the next question, please? Oh,
Well, when computation neuroscience appear in our contemporary society, and what are some of the challenges we face with this particular field of scientific exploration.
Thank you. Yeah. Where computational neuroscience will appear, it's already ubiquitous in many ways. For instance, the deep learning on which artificial intelligences are based is excuse me, is a direct outgrowth of study into simulating neural networks, and then taking those results and using them to do useful computations. For instance, Chat GPT is a perfect example. Yeah, and then there are many other artificial neural networks, as they're called, that do many useful things. As I said, many of them are used in medical imaging, but they're also used in search. ChatGPT is another example. They're even used in, for instance, graphics cards to optimize the performance of games, and even in the actual processor itself now, I believe they use a small artificial neural network to do certain tasks. So they are everywhere, but in terms of becoming sophisticated to actually enough to interface with human nervous tissue itself, they're only just starting to get there. Of course, we've had the cochlear implant for quite some time, but that is a far less challenging task than something, let's say, as complicated as a camera that's literally hooked into somebody's brain to replace their retina and their eyes.
Fantastic.
He's back.
So like I mean, then of course, there'll also be like different like ethical challenges with that too, wouldn't there? Sean, right?
Most definitely. Even cochlear implants were actually quite controversial within the deaf community themselves, and many deaf people they declined to get them. But that there are something that is, interfacing to your actual brain is problematic, because there are, on the cards and research happening at the moment to do things like help people with dementia, for instance. And that is,
Wow, really?
there's an enormous potential there, but there's also quite quite a quite it's very it's
Some great
fraught,
positive
because it
opportunities.
really goes. Yes, it does, but it really cuts to the quick of what it actually means to be human, and
Yeah.
it is actually, in a way, doing your thinking for you. So I think that probably best sums up the ethical challenge of it, is that it is something that is doing a certain part of your thinking, even if it's autonomous for you, and that's probably fine for something like vision or hearing. But
Yeah.
what about memory, for instance? Somebody has a memory problem. How can we be assured that the people who are producing the device have the best interests of the patient at heart, and not have some ulterior motive, for instance. A
That's
good
true.
example of that. I beg your pardon?
I said like
Sorry.
that's really true. You're right.
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that?
The chances for things to go wrong would be pretty like, the chance of that actually happening would be quite real, then, right, Sean?
Yeah.
Wouldn't
It's not only nefarious actors that is
it? Yeah.
a concern. Actually, many of the previous attempts have ended in brain damage, because they work fine for a while, but then they basically burn out the nerves that they're connected to. And yeah, this is somewhat getting a bit far afield of computational neuroscience, which is strictly concerned with the simulation of human nervous tissues, but it is a direct application of the knowledge that is gained in those fields. So, and there are other more subtle ethical problems as well, in not only in the realm of disability, but for using an artificial intelligence to automate thinking. Obviously,
Yeah.
do we trust a company basically to have a device to do our thinking for us? I think is the best summary I can come up with.
It certainly is a worry, right, Sean?
I beg your pardon?
That like it certainly like is a worry, right?
Yeah.
To be trusting companies like that. I mean, you have to have we have to have great confidence, wouldn't we? So keeping on, just keeping on that theme, Sean. Then, could we mention the actual pitfalls and benefits to humanity, and particularly to those of us who actually have disabilities, as to what AI robotic technology could actually do for us? What's the pitfalls and the benefits of it as they are weighing up?
The benefits would be that you may be cured of paralysis or something like that, or whatever disease, perhaps you could overcome it completely. And there certainly has been successful applications of that. Like for instance, there's currently a thing that basically images the electrical signal coming down from the brain on the spine, and then uses Bluetooth to jump the gap of somebody who has a severed spine, and stimulate it below the transection of the spine. So basically curing somebody of paralysis. However, that's using Bluetooth, which is it's not the most secure system, and these things have an inherent problem in that they're usually a proprietary system, and the problem with that is that you can't actually verify for yourself if it is correct. People might say, well, you can't verify that let's say a brain surgeon did your brain surgery correctly, but some other surgeon can. However, if you have a completely proprietary device implanted in you, the only person who knows how that works really is the company. And if the company goes bust, you could become disabled again. And some of these things may be, for instance, a one-shot deal. Once it's implanted, it. You're right, David.
Yeah, I'm all good.
You okay there, David?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Yeah,
Try to stay with us, mate.
Once these devices are implanted, it may not be practical to put them in a second time if they fail. So if the company goes bust, for instance, or there's a problem, that wasn't, adequately audited or something, then that could be a real problem. And I think
so you can say that that person turns out to be factory second.
Well, I think it's more basic than that. I think that for you to meaningfully consent to a procedure, you have to have some sort of understanding of it. If it's just some magical piece of technology that they put in you, and nobody can, actually inspect it, and give you the confidence that you need to consent, then I think that's a problem, and I think it falls foul of medical ethics.
When I first became blind, the actual bionic eye came out, and I was one of the first ones they asked to try it. I asked them, okay, now what does this entitle? This allows me to do what and see what? If it's worth it for me, if I see properly, yes, I'll try it. But they go, no, you're going to be seeing dots. But later on, they'll be improving. I go, no, thanks, but no thanks. I don't need you to put anything in my brain and have something go wrong. And then I rejected it until they perfect it. Once they perfect it, I'll come back to it. I might try it.
Yeah.
But everyone's different.
True.
So Sean.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, how would you suggest we best prepare for a future that actually includes like computational neuroscience?
Well, I think honestly, we need to have a lot more open exchange of actually how these things work. Sure, we have patents and things like that, but that doesn't include source code. Typically, there are patents for software, but typically they don't involve you being able to actually look at how the software works. Typically, it's also actually illegal to reverse, or not illegal, but against the user agreement to actually try and inspect to see how this thing works. And I really do think that is a horrendous problem for, for security, for confidence in the device and its robustness, and just overall confidence that it can't be suborned for something, more sinister.
I think meeting people that are using the technology will be good, because then you hear from first-hand experience.
Right.
Yeah. It'll be useful.
I have a question. What
go ahead.
about the issue of data ownership and who controls the data being interpreted by
That's
computational neuroscience.
that's a very good question, and I think it is a basic problem with how medical care and how software actually works currently, and I think it is a problem first and foremost of ownership. You don't have ownership of these things really. You've bought them, but or the government's bought them for you, but practically you can't actually have any real control over them apart from having them turned off. And I think that is a real problem. And I think that, yes, the data streams that come from these devices pose a huge privacy concerns, amongst other things. They, raise questions of identity, and I really don't think it's appropriate for anybody else but the patient to have ownership of that data and the software that actually runs on whatever these implanted devices.
Absolutely.
I really think that it is a massive problem, and well, these we've had the death of 1,000 cuts with the intrusion of surveillance into everyone's lives with something as simple as a mobile phone. That is just really, when you break it down, it's a computer that's been miniaturized with a radio in it. But what we're actually talking about is a thinking machine. So yes, there is quite a lot of really quite dystopian futures that I can see opening up that will make Google spying on you look like a walk in the park. We're talking about literally reading your actual thoughts. Like, that is literally the point of computational neuroscience. So yeah, obviously that has tremendous potential for abuse.
That's one of my thoughts, I tell you.
Yeah, it does sound actually crazy, but that is literally the point of it, is to actually see what's going on in your head, in your spine, in the nerves, in your body, basically. and understand what's going on at a fundamental level. And many of these things actually have, you know, quite beneficial applications. Like, for instance, if, you know, somebody could read you, if your sub-vocalized thoughts, that would make it far easier for people with a speech impediment to make themselves heard and understood. And
I have an idea.
Yeah, go on.
If they can read your thoughts later on, if they can we program your dreams?
Well, it is they are working on two-way applications of it, but yeah, there is, for instance, there's one paper that I saw today when I was you know, preparing, and it basically had a system where people who were non-verbal autistic and had problems with communicating their emotions were actually hooked up to, I believe it was some sort of electroencephalogram or a magnetic sensor, but basically it detected their brainwaves and visualized them, and it could fairly reliably detect what their emotional state was, and then, you know, use that to play a sound which was indicative of their emotional state. However, the exact same technology is actually being currently used by China compulsorily on their bus drivers to, you know, make sure they have nothing but happy thoughts, I guess. So, yeah.
Wow.
As I said, these things are a very double-edged sword because they cut to the quick of what it means to be human and to your innermost thoughts, feelings, and desires.
So I guess then, Sean, your futuristic vision for this would be quite a mix then, right?
Well, yes, I could see it go at, you know, well, we are seeing, you know, horribly dystopian applications of it, but I really think that we do need to actually get back ownership of these things. And it's not just, you know, reading your brainwaves, it's like getting back control of, you know, your other devices as well, which are, you know, sitting there, you know, patiently listening, so, you know, they can figure out, you know, what ads to show you.
Yeah.
And I fear that the same laxity that has allowed that to occur will also occur with, you know, more sophisticated things like computational neuroscience, like neural networks.
So, like we're now going to final thoughts. David, your final thought for this episode?
My final thought
What do we
is
think?
technology is getting to a stage where I don't think privacy is much, but it also can help. There's negatives and there's positives in both.
Yeah, but who decides? Who decides which positive we have and which negative we don't have? Shouldn't that be a matter for each individual?
Yes, there should be our own choices where we put in the settings who's in control of each person. So if I want to be in control of myself, I put that in the settings, saying I've got control of it. But if you don't want control, you let that be in your own settings.
So you can program the system to meet your needs.
I'm very, very computer literate, where I studied IT myself before I became blind, and I've got computer programming knowledge. But if we have a choice of Who controls what? That'll be most likely, but it's hard to get control of that because there's a lot of people that can hack.
Yeah, I agree. I think my final thought would be I think that it needs to be like well regulated as a system in place, so we actually make sure there is regulation around it, and we make sure that it's consumer protected, so that we have decent rights there that actually are actually being upheld by our government and our the relevant authorities. Like Jonathan, your final thought?
My final thought is computational neuroscience has the potential to revolutionize the way we interact with society, but as the current debate around ChatGPT has shown, governments need to stay one step ahead of these new scientific developments.
Yeah, agreed. So Sean, you get to the last final thought. What's your final thought to end today's episode? What's your wrap
Well,
up
I would say that
takeaway?
well, first, I forgot to mention that I'm what would be called an enthusiastic amateur. I never actually graduated from my degree, so I don't want to misrepresent my qualifications. However, I
That's all right.
really don't think that government actually can be trusted with this. For instance, the Abbott and then the Morrison government, for instance, instead of protecting us from surveillance in social media, in pretty much any communications platform, they pass legislation which makes it so any communications platform, information processing device, anything basically that can be used to communicate from one person to another or store and retrieve information has to have a backdoor built into it for the government if the government asks you. And you can't tell anybody about it. And you basically got to do it for free. And you also have to do it in a form that they like. And the Morrison government extended that power from ASIO, from the federal police to local police. So how much more tempted would they be to literally read your sub-vocalized thoughts, for instance? For example, if they had,
I've got one more thing. Well, if they can read your thoughts, what makes it that they can't program your thoughts?
Well, that's the next step. And there has been, experiments. There has been, actual progress in actually, doing that. Obviously, because of medical ethics, they haven't actually used it for brain control that we know of, but they have done things like stimulate the brain for, to relieve depression, relieve epilepsy, control obsessive thoughts. But maybe some thoughts you would like to obsess over, and personally, I don't fancy the government
You
slapping a
might.
mental health order on me and then, going around and rummaging in my head.
Exactly.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood, yeah.
So, thank you, Sean, for joining us this week on the podcast. And look, you've been watching CripChat Australia. Thanks for joining us this week. And look, we'll be back again next week. And please like, share, and subscribe. And join us next week for more. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.